what's this? Ancient symbols sparks claims of global prehistoric society. A society, you say? Was it perhaps great? Perhaps great society? I beg to ask. What's this? Talk TV. And do you know what they do? They talk. It's TV and they talk. It's crazy like thing set up. It's brilliant.
Let's talk about ancient civilizations and the intriguing suggestion that before even the pyramids, dating back 40,000 years, the world was kind of...
Pyramids are old. They're so old. We don't know. What are they? Where did they come from? Who built them? How? Why? How? Again, you say, how? When? And then the Sphinx. You see the Sphinx and it's like, who done this? Magnificence. That's what done it. Magnificence. We don't know.
Ruled by an advanced civilization that was somehow wiped out by some kind of cataclysm, some kind of dreadful global meteorological event.
Yeah, they say like meteorite and that, meteorological. With the planets. Planets, fat, boom, everything finished. Done, finito. Pyramids are there. They survive. The trauma. Oh no.
Or earthquake or whatever. It crops up a lot, this theory. Let's talk to historian, our favourite historian, Ashley Hearn. Hi Ashley, how are you doing?
Hi Kevin, good to speak to you.
Man, Ashley there.
To you. I know you're going to knock this down,
mate,
but
yeah.
let's have a chat about it, shall we? This story has cropped up in a couple of the papers this week. Mysterious carved symbols found across the world could point to a lost human civilization.
I mean, these are ancient symbols. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Around the world, in fact, these things are. They are, actually.
Dating back 40,000 years. There are claims that there are these symbols, similar symbols, all over the world, which have uncovered, I don't even know what this means, but I'm going to read it out, have uncovered paradigm-shifting evidence.
Paradigm shifting. Paradigm. You know what I mean? Paradigm. Stuff changes after that. Don't shift my paradigm. People start saying, too late, it's the paradigm shift time, guys. Shift. You know, get in the way. Stop it, I'm paradigm shifting. It's a paradigm shift.
Of a lost civilization that could radically rewrite human history. Now,
it could.
You'll have heard this before. It's not the first time I've heard that before even the pyramid.
I've read many books about this sort of stuff. It's actually a very interesting subject, jokes aside. Because, you know, I'm a clown. But jokes aside, I have read like quite a lot on lost civilization, like Graham Hancock, stuff like that. And it's super interesting. It's literally a mystery. You know, it's one of them mysteries. Like, how did they build them? How did they do that? Why? Even Göbekli Tepe now is like, what? 12,000 years old? What? How did they do that? It's magnificent. For me, it's like, it's so intriguing. And Graham Hancock is like absolutely right when he says, with every turn of the archaeologist's, you know, brush or shovel, history has changed. It's true, because we don't know what we're going to find. We don't know, you know, what we're going to discover, yet to be discovered, of this, you know, seemingly magnificent civilization that preceded us. Like, it's just like, it's fascinating.
It's before human history began to be.
I mean, look at that. Magnificent. And to be there, I've never been there. I would love to go there. One of these days I will go. But imagine how it would have been in the heyday. I can imagine it all being covered like this, with this, but all covered. You can almost see it. It's like, but all covered and probably shining white, like, or something like that. Magnificent.
Recorded, there was, according to these theories, to some historians, a ancient civilization that ruled the world, as it were. They were very advanced. Technologically, they knew about geometry, they knew about astrology, and that somehow or other this civilization was wiped out by a...
The Sphinx as well, innit? Was buried for years up to here, like his head was just poking out. For years, they didn't know the body was there. We don't know. We honestly don't know.
Catastrophic global event.
It's like,
some
look how
kind
magnificent.
of cataclysm. You've heard these theories. What are they based on, and what do you think?
Well, I mean, these ideas have been around for quite a long time, sort of at least a century. It's called hyperdiffusionism, and
Hyperdiffusionism.
it's the theory that
I knew that, of course.
Hyperdiffusionism.
What is it?
Hyperdiffusionism. So it's the idea that all the similarities you can spot amongst different human groups through history, rather than being the idea that they all adopted these ideas separately, they all got them from one single inspiration. And so there used to be the idea that, for example, Egyptians travelled across the Atlantic and brought ideas to, say, Central America, Mesoamerica. Famously, there's pyramids in Mesoamerica. You've got pyramids in Egypt. So did they get that idea from...
Like the spread of the knowledge?
From Egypt, essentially. So that was one of the older arguments. And this one is the idea that Egypt itself got its ideas of building pyramids from this ancient civilization. So the chap whose work is sort of in all of these headlines is a man called Matthew Lacroix. He's a sort of independent archaeologist. He's written several books arguing for this sort of ancient civilization, and in a way, sort of all our minds, all our ideas about the divine, etc., have all come from this civilization 40,000 years ago.
It's interesting.
The evidence essentially is partly because he claims to have found a site in eastern Turkey where he believes that the sort of signs originated. Now, you could say, well, there's some sort of merit. These symbols pop up everywhere. Surely that must mean something. The central problem is that these pyramids are quite common, because if you're going to build a structure, one of the ways you keep it up is you sort of have a flat bottom and a thin top. There's no sort of, you didn't need to invent that idea and spread it around. Humans probably came up with that idea independently. The central sort of dating thesis, this 40,000 years, this comes from his argument that the sort of Sphinx, we're back to our dear old friend the Sphinx, and other structures are aligned with how the stars would have looked at different points in the past. This is
I've heard them ones.
something called precession. So as the Earth spins
precession of the equinox
around over time, its axis moves because it's sort of affected by gravity from the sun and the moon. So as time goes on, the stars look different. And so if you argue that the civilized or particular buildings have been set up according to a particular sort of stellar...
Yeah, it will sort of capture that time of when you can date it by that way, by, you know, when was, you know, Leo, because it seems like a lion, isn't it? Like, when was Leo in the sky at that time on particular, like thousands of years, then they'll know, you know. Yeah, I've heard this theory before.
And you can say, well, actually, that star alignment would only match at a particular period in time. So he argues that essentially you've got two time frames. You've got one about 12,000 years ago,
12,000
and you've got one
years,
about 40,000 years ago. So essentially,
crazy.
If you have a civilization...
12,000 and 40,000. I also saw this other documentary before of like a known geologist. His first words, like, he works with rocks, he's a professional, you know, he's a professor or whatever, you know, one of them top geezers of geology. And like, when he first went to see the Sphinx, his first words were, when he saw it, was like, wow, these stones look hundreds of thousands of years old. Hundreds of thousands of years. That's crazy. I just thought I'd put that in there, but it's even mad with the 40,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago. It's mad.
Which could then inspires all of these common practices. You then find a date range when that could work. So that's where the dating comes from. And again, to be representative of the Order of the White Wet Blanket, as I usually am. There's no
Order of the White Wet Blanket.
independent evidence to support this dating. And again, it's essentially built up on a series of speculative leaps.
Yes.
I mean,
let me just put this into
It's just their imagination. He goes, it's just their imagination.
Claims to have found symbols that seem to indicate a common culture in, as you say, Turkey, Egypt, of course, Cambodia, Peru, Bolivia, in other words, all across the world. He says that this civilization of which he talks were proficient in cosmic cycles. They anticipated global disasters. They concealed a sophisticated code within geometry, symbolism and monument design across the globe to preserve their knowledge ahead of catastrophic events. Well, if the story is true, their ability to anticipate global disasters did not preclude them falling victim to one.
They're like, this is one that we got to take, boys. This one is unavoidable. Unfortunately, this one is going to hit. We're going to have a disaster on our hands. Hide the knowledge. One of them situations.
So, do you see what I mean? Lacroix's story is that at a certain point there was some kind of global catastrophe, meteorological, earthquake, seismic, whatever, that wiped this ancient civilization out.
The central problem with all of these theories is that the time they're talking about during the Ice Age, there's no evidence of any sort of advanced civilization at all. Humans, all the evidence, all the archaeological evidence, of which there is quite a lot, suggests that humans are working in small hunter-gatherer groups. Now, these hunter-gatherer groups were pretty...
That's what they call it, hunter-gatherer groups, isn't it? It's like not a advanced civilization or nothing like that. These are hunter-gatherer groups, and that just doesn't sit right. It simply doesn't sit right with me. It's one of them ones where it's like, no, how? They're a sophisticated society, clearly. Look at the buildings that they've done. Look how long they're standing. Can we do that now? With all of our so-called technology? I don't know. They built them and then look how long they've lasted. Surely these are not like hunter-gatherers. It's hard to believe that. You know, they're sophisticated people. That's what I believe.
Be quite sophisticated. Their brains were essentially the same as ours. And as we know, humans are pretty ingenious creatures who can come up with solutions to all sorts of problems. But for a civilization, you need things like the development of domesticated agriculture. And there's no evidence that domestication of food occurs anywhere in the last it's probably 11,000 years. The best evidence suggests it's about 9,000 BC. In modern-day eastern Turkey, northern Syria, that's where domestication first takes place. Now, lots of really interesting things happening when humans start to domesticate. There's sites like Göbekli Tepe, which a lot of people use as sort of this prototype. That's a really interesting site. These hunter-gatherers are creating these big monumental structures. But further south, there's also agriculturalists who are also building sort of structures. And I think
would this be, Ashley, sorry to interrupt, would this be like 40,000 years ago when...
no, this is 11,000 years ago.
So what would you say, 40,000 years? So 10,000 years ago,
40,000
hunter-gatherers were beginning to create...
yeah, so what about 40,000 is?
Interesting structures and therefore kind of form a
sophisticated society.
40,000 years ago, what state was humanity in your opinion?
Well, operating in small groups in a very difficult sort of environment where you don't have the last glacial period, but you've got a series of sort of cold snaps where you have glaciers moving down, and then other periods of relative stability. But they're quite short. It's pretty erratic.
And it's like a thing where we can't really know, innit? How would we know? How would we gain this knowledge, of how the people were, the prior civilization? We can't. I don't know how we'll be able to do that.
And all the evidence is that humans are having to adapt to very sort of difficult circumstances. I mean, there are examples or evidence for global catastrophes. There's volcanic explosions. There's one about 70,000 years ago. But you can trace humans and human groups moving around. And of course, you remember 40,000 years ago, there's not just us. There are other human species around still at that period.
Yeah, and there would have been the Neanderthals and all that.
Neanderthals, you've got Homo floresiensis, this remarkable little hobbit people who lived in modern-day Indonesia. So
mad. Little ones just like running around and that. Weird humans and that. All right, mate? Yeah, that's Phil.
there's lots of interesting things going on, but it's very small scale.
It's interesting things.
It's looking at small groups, and you simply can't. There's so many sort of requirements that you need to build a civilization. It's a massive population. You need food. You need trade. You need all of these sort of qualities, and there's simply no evidence for that happening.
So your contention, or your knowledgeable contention, would be 40,000 years ago, the idea that there was some very advanced civilization prospering on the planet is far-fetched. But you know, I'm always going to ask you that: is it at least outside chance possible?
I mean, anything is possible. The evidence at the moment doesn't support it. I mean, again, this is an interesting creative theory. The key point is his
creative theory
that he believes is the source for all of these sort of civilization, which he believes begins in eastern Turkey. Again, he's got no independent dating. Most archaeologists who work in that area believe that this sort of city is from what's called the Urartu period, the Iron Age. So we're talking in sort of the last 4,000 years or 3,000 years.
Okay.
So.
All right. So listen, fascinating stuff, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to get you back on now.
Yeah, it is. It really is like one of those.
I've got to talk to you about the Hobbit people of Indonesia. So stand by for a phone call from my top team, and we'll get you on, actually.
The Hobbit people of Indonesia. Interesting. So there's so much stuff. There's so much things we don't really know. We don't know, man. And it's going to, you know, like a thing like ancient civilizations, that's a hard nut to crack, I would say. You know what I mean? It's like difficult. How would you begin? The mainstream are years behind this topic. Hunter-gatherer perfectly straight holes, 1/8 inch in diameter, 8 feet through, pink granite, and perfect 90-degree angles inside out with a couple of copper axes and an antler. Joke. True. I refuse to believe it's like hunter-gatherers running around, like hunter-gathering and that. They're a sophisticated society. Flowing around in robes. They probably could hover. They were probably hovering. Like this. Hovering around. Their robes flowing in the wind behind them. That's how I think they were. Doing stuff like this. And like, you know, a 2-ton rock is being levitated. Like 3 geezers built the pyramid. 3 of them. One in a shift. Not all 3 of them together. They do it by shifts. It's your job from 9 a.m. to 3, and then from 3 I continue to, 8, and then 8 you go midnight, and then we go round. Yeah, it's interesting. It really is. I'll put this little video in the description. Go check it out.